Namaskar viewers and listeners of the Great Game Reloaded. I am Tilak Divesha. Here's a bit of breaking news. According to Pak Media reports, a US-based company, US Strategic Metals, USSM, has sent its first consignment of mineral samples from Pakistan to the United States. This shipment is reportedly part of a deal between USSM and Pakistan's Frontier Works organization that is linked to the Pakistan Army. However, concerns are being raised over the transparency and legitimacy of this arrangement. The minerals are said to have been extracted from regions in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, allegedly without the knowledge or consent of the local populations. Moreover, the matter has not been brought up for discussion in Pakistan's National Assembly, raising further questions about accountability, provincial rights, and the lack of public consultation regarding the exploitation of natural resources. More on this story in later episodes. Let's come back to our main story on Bagram. President Trump wants Bagram back. President Biden had ordered an embarrassing exit from Afghanistan. Trump had said no endless wars, and now the US wants to head back into Afghanistan. Let me give you a hint. China. So what exactly is Bagram? Why is it significant? Why does this dusty plateau north of Kabul matter so much? That too in 2025, even after America withdrew from it in 2021. And what does this mean for South Asia, for Pakistan, for India, and for the world? Surrounded by the Hindu Kush mountains, Bagram is nearly 5,000 feet above sea level. Its airbase, once a Soviet outpost during the 1980s war in Afghanistan, grew into the largest US and NATO military installation in the country. For 20 years, Bagram Air Base was more than just an airport. It was the beating heart of America's longest war. In 2001, after the Taliban regime fell, US forces and their allies seized Bagram. What they inherited was a relic of the Cold War. What they created was a city of steel and concrete. The base featured twin runways, one stretching over 11,000 feet, capable of handling the largest cargo planes. Barracks, hospitals, intelligence hubs, even Burger King and Pizza Hut mushroomed in the desert air. At its peak, Bagram housed tens of thousands of troops. From here, drones launched missions, jets provided air support, helicopters flew into remote valleys. For 2 decades, nearly every US operation in Afghanistan, whether against the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, or later the ISIS affiliates, was in some way linked to Bagram. It was not just an airbase. It was a symbol of America's permanence, or so they thought. Inside the base, Bagram resembled a strange hybrid of a small American town. Soldiers jogged around perimeter roads, ate at fast food franchises imported from home, and called their families using Wi-Fi hubs. But Bagram also had a prison, the Parwan Detention Facility. Thousands of Afghans were held there, often without trial, accused of supporting insurgents. Human rights groups criticized reports of abuse, indefinite detention, and lack of transparency, and called it a black hole. The Afghans were not happy with American presence. They were often hostile and always uncertain and resentful of foreign presence. But they endured noise from roaring jets, land seizures, and the militarization of daily life. The base provided jobs, drivers, cleaners, translators. Then came July 2021. The Americans left Bagram. Not with ceremony, not with dignity, not with a parade, not even with a handover, but in the middle of the night without informing their Afghan partners. They switched off their lights, packed their gear, and drove away. Afghan soldiers woke up to find the base empty. Looters rushed in. Weeks later, Kabul fell. The sudden withdrawal shocked many Afghans. Then came the swift collapse of their government weeks later. For America, the departure from Bagram marked the end of an era, the closing of a chapter that had begun 2 decades earlier with such forceful entry. For the Taliban, capturing Bagram was a military windfall and a symbolic victory. The empire's fortress was now in their hands. It was the end of a chapter that had begun in 2001. So why does Bagram matter now, all of a sudden to President Trump? Simply because geography does not melt away. Bagram sits less than 50 miles from Kabul and a few hundred miles from China. It is close to highways, close to mountain passes into Central Asia. Its runways can host the largest cargo planes. Its runways allow for rapid deployment of troops and supplies from the wider region, tying Afghanistan into a vast logistical web stretching from the Persian Gulf to Central Asia. Donald Trump himself put it bluntly, and I quote, "Bagram is an hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons," unquote. While this may be an exaggeration, Bagram's strategic location in the 21st century is undeniable. And that's the point. For Washington, Bagram is not just about Afghanistan. It's about China. It's about Russia. It's about projecting power deep into Eurasia. It could also be about Afghanistan's supposedly vast and untapped mineral wealth, with Bagram being the springboard to secure access to Afghanistan's potential mineral wealth. China is already making significant inroads into Afghanistan's mining sector. Since 2021, Bagram's story has continued to shape regional politics. For the Taliban, holding the base is proof of sovereignty restored after decades of foreign control. For Washington, it remains a lost asset with lingering strategic appeal. Its location offers unmatched regional reach. In September 2025, standing next to Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Trump said, and I quote, "We are trying to get it back. One of the biggest air bases in the world. We gave it to them for nothing. We want it back," unquote. He even warned later, quote, "If Afghanistan doesn't give Bagram back, bad things are going to happen," unquote. But what does this really mean? Does he think the Taliban would meekly hand over the base to the US? Or is America planning to reinvade in Afghanistan? Or is Trump simply sending a signal to Beijing, to Moscow, to voters back home? The Taliban response was swift. The Taliban supreme leader gathered his top commanders in Kandahar. Their decision: if the US tries to retake Bagram, Afghanistan will prepare for war. Warning, quote, "Not even a meter of Afghanistan land will be given to the Americans," unquote. Taliban Defense Ministry Chief Fasiuddin Fitrat declared Bagram, quote, "out of the question," unquote, while spokesman Zabiullah Mujahid urged Washington to adopt, quote unquote, "realism and rationality," citing the 2020 Doha Agreement in which the US had promised to respect Afghan sovereignty. The Taliban even warned Pakistan. Yes, Pakistan, the same country that had nurtured them for decades. The Taliban leadership in Kandahar delivered a chilling message. If Pakistan helped America in any Bagram operation, Islamabad will be treated as an enemy state. That's a stunning reversal, the Taliban warning their old patrons. At the same time, the Taliban reached out to Russia, China, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and even India, building a diplomatic shield against Washington. For the US, Bagram is strategically critical. It is a perfect listening post, a hub for drones, for surveillance, for projecting power, a platform to oversee counterterrorism operations and monitor Chinese and Russian activity. Didn't they know all this before leaving? But militarily seizing it again means a new invasion. Thousands of troops, billions of dollars, another forever war. Taking the diplomatic route, it means recognizing Taliban rule, lifting sanctions, providing aid, overlooking the Taliban treatment of women. Would Trump go that far? Or is Bagram just a negotiating chip, part of a bigger negotiation with Beijing and Moscow? Trump's move on Bagram have coincided with the revocation of India's sanctions waiver on Iran's Chabahar port. One can clearly see a US tilt towards Pakistan. Preferential tariffs, defense talks, crypto energy partnerships have fueled speculation of a dramatic US-Pakistan reset. Bagram, in that sense, is not only an airbase, it is a bargaining token in the great game of South Asia. And then there is Iran, just across the border. Tehran sees a future US presence in Bagram as a threat. Bagram could be used by the US to strike at Iranian targets. Revenge for Iran having struck US bases in the Gulf. And China? Beijing sees Bagram as a dagger pointed at its western frontier. It has invested a lot in Afghanistan's minerals. A US return would rattle those plans. Not surprisingly, the foreign ministers of Russia, China and Iran have all publicly warned that the return of any American military installation in Afghanistan could undermine regional security and would risk fueling extremism and destabilizing the neighboring states. So Bagram is no longer just about Afghans and Americans. It is about China, Russia, Iran, Pakistan and maybe even India, all playing the great game again. The Soviets built it, the Americans expanded it, the Taliban captured it. Each empire thought they had permanence. Each empire was wrong. Because in Afghanistan, it is only geography that is permanent. Its strategic importance is unquestionable, but in Afghan politics, symbols matter as much as runways. For the Taliban, ceding it would be humiliation. For Washington, reclaiming it would be restoring pride and allowing assertion of power. The British retreats of the 19th century, the Soviet defeat in the 1980s, the US withdrawal in 2021 reminds us Afghanistan cannot be held without local consent. So will America get Bagram back? Unlikely. Not without another war, not without concessions that are politically impossible. But will Trump keep talking about it? Yes. Because Bagram is a strategic symbol, it's about the great game reloaded. I am Tilak Devesha. Thank you for watching. Do like, share and comment. Namaskar and Jai Hind.